We've done supercars, we've done European hatchbacks, we've done trucks, we've even redesigned vans on this channel. But today is going to be a little bit different. Today we are going to redesign a Buick Riviera. And no, I'm not talking about the cool ones from the 60s and 70s, such as the beautiful 65 Riviera or the 1971 Riviera. Oh no, today we are redesigning the 1995 Buick Riviera. And this is the result of a vote on my Patreon, and the 1995 Buick Riviera won with a staggering 100%. I guess that's what happens when you have 3 supporters on Patreon. It's probably the least exciting car we've done so far, but in that comes the challenge. How do we make the 1995 such a personless or unidentifiable car? How do we make that exciting and modern? That's what we're going to do in this video. Alright, so here we are in Photoshop. We're not gonna be wasting any time today, so let's get started with this redesign of the 1995 Buick Riviera. A beauty, isn't it? But before we start doing that, or before we get into the stats and facts about the Riviera, I want to ask you for 2 favors, and then we'll take you exactly 5 seconds to do. The first one, if you enjoy these kind of videos, is to hit that like button. That really means a lot to me. It helps the channel, it helps the videos, and it helps me get excited to do more of these videos on your suggestions. That's number 1. Number 2 is to hit that subscribe button. If you've watched a couple of videos of mine and you enjoy them, you like them, and you haven't subscribed yet, that's just not cool. So hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell so you get notified when I upload new videos. 2 things to do, it takes 5 seconds to do. Now that we're done that, let's go in and talk about this 1995 Buick Riviera. It isn't exactly the pinnacle of build quality and material choices. With more plastic on the inside than your plumber's utility truck, the 95 Riviera was a typical American 90s car. You'll struggle to find any sort of sharp edges or corners in the bodywork. It seems the car was designed using nothing but ellipses. It kind of feels like the designers lost all of the rulers and only had ellipse and curve templates left to use. It's part of what I call the melted cheese era of car design, where everything is round and bubbly without any real defining lines. And this is typical for the 90s, and especially in American and Asian cars. However, this lack of everything is what makes this redesign challenging and exciting. If we're going to modernize this Buick, we need to give it a personality. I don't want to change the proportion of the car. The long rear end with its rear graphics are unique design features of the 99 Riviera that I want to keep and modernize. Instead, we're going to enhance those features. After a hiatus in 1994, the Riviera returned in 1995 with radical styling that departed from the previous generation's traditional image. A 205 horsepower, naturally aspirated V6 was standard, with a supercharged version rated at 225 horsepower available as an option. By this time, Rivieras were built in Lake Orion, Michigan, with the very first 95 Rivieras rolling off the assembly line on May 23, 1994. In 96, supercharged versions saw an increase in power to 240 horsepower, and in 97, the Riviera saw suspension revisions, removing excess weight. For 98, the 240 horsepower supercharged V6 became standard. GM's OnStar service was added as an option, along with minor interior design changes. With sales of the coupes declining in the North American market, the GM decided to discontinue the Riviera. 1999 was the car's last model year, with production of 1956 cars that year, ceasing on December 25, 1998. The final 200 cars had special silver paint and trim, and they were called Silver Arrow models, a designation which came from several Silver Arrow show cars that had been built off Riviera bodies by Bill Mitchell. The 8th generation Rivieras received the most powerful V6 Buick engines since the Grand Nationals of the 1980s. The supercharged OHV V6 gave impressive torque and acceleration, pushing the car from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds and turning the quarter mile in 15.5 seconds. And this was a fast car for the late 90s. Talking about the design of this Buick Riviera, and what I want to do with it is to keep some of that 90s bubbliness that I was talking about in the beginning of this video, because it's so typical for the 90s and it doesn't really exist anymore. Right now we have all these manufacturers, pretty much every single one of them creating very sharp looking cars, and they all have very distinct edges and corners. So I want to keep some of that roundness of the 90s, but at the same time add a few unique lines to this Buick Riviera, and especially work on the graphics on the rear, such as this taillight that's so typical for the 95 Riviera. So how do we modernize that? Well, I said in the beginning that it looked like the designers only used ellipses to create this car. So I want to have some ellipse shape in the rear, and the original has that as well. And that's something that I wanted to keep and modernize. For the wheels, I wanted to have something classy and nothing that yells too much and doesn't bring too much attention, because this isn't a car that's shouty. So the wheels, I wanted them to be multi-spoke, and since it's a Buick, I think chrome or very polished some sort of metal shiny finish of the wheels suits this car, even though it's not my personal preference of wheels, but I think it suits this type of car and this type of era. One key design feature of the Buick, the 95 to 99 Buick Riviera, is the stretched out rear part. So if you look at this from a side view, you'll notice that the rear is very stretched and it has some interesting proportions. The C-pillar dips down earlier than what you're used to seeing on a coupe this size, and that creates a rear view that almost looks like a front view from some angles. And same thing here, that's one of these design features that is so special for this 8th generation Riviera that that's not something that I wanted to change. Instead, I wanted to enhance it and make it even more pronounced. To make the car look even longer than what it is, I wanted to have a line that stretches from the front all the way to the back, and I think the shoulder line in this car really works well because it goes into the graphics of the car, and especially it continues into the rear ducktail, or whatever you want to call this, chamfer in the rear end, and I think it looks really good. I don't want to have too many curves in this because it's a simple design, so I was thinking of maybe have it dip down in front of the front fender, this line, the shoulder line, but I decided to keep it straight because I think that stretches the car out more and it fits this car better than if we have a curvature in there. The reason I'm working in grayscale here is because the original paint on this car was so hideous that I just didn't want to work with it. I'd rather work in grayscale than using that beige, disgusting color that was on the original image for this redesign, so that's why I'm using grayscale. We might add some color right here. I experimented with it, but I wasn't happy with it, so I'm gonna keep it grayscale and then turn on the lights as we're coming to a finish on this redesign. And that's pretty much the only color that's going to be in this render, except for I added some blue gray, cool gray tone to the overall shading of the image. Well, there we go. That's the 1995 to 1999 Buick Riviera redesign. And I actually had a lot of fun with this because it's not what we typically do, or I like to take cars and redesign cars that are kind of special and unique, but this is unique in its own way. It's, for me, this original design of the Buick Riviera 95 is the typical 90s design. So modernizing something like that is unique in its own way, and it's challenging in its own way, because we can't just add a bunch of sharp lines to this design. We need to figure out what are the key graphical elements of the design itself, and then we kind of want to enhance those by using graphics and a few additional lines, as well as updating the rear diffuser, the lower part of the car, and we also updated the wheels, of course, and a little bit of the proportions of the car. As always, if you enjoy these kind of videos, hit that like button, and if you want to be part of our large Patreon group of 3 people, you can join Patreon down below in the description. And if you are a supporter on Patreon, you get to vote on these redesigns and what kind of models and cars you want to see in these videos. And of course, the less people are in there, the more likely the chance is for your suggestion or your vote to win. So if that sounds interesting, check that out below in the description. As always, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm the Sketch Monkey. Take care, doodle something today, and I will see you in the next video.